This is the Liaison Podcast with Izzy Park. Today we're going to run the duty-free shops of Langkawi like it's a competitive sport. There is a moment, somewhere around 6 a.m. on the west coast of Langkawi, when the beach belongs entirely to itself. The rental chairs are stacked, the bar shutters are down, the sand has been raked into clean, parallel lines that won't survive the day, and the water is doing something that the word blue doesn't quite cover. It's pale, almost silver. The kind of colour that makes you stop and recalibrate, because you weren't expecting the sea to look like hammered metal before breakfast. Fishing boats are already out, sitting low on the glassy surface, loaded and purposeful. Near the road, a hawker stall has opened early, and the smell coming off it is pandan rice steam and sambal anchovy, sharp and sweet and slightly funky, cutting clean through the salt air. You could stand in that smell for a long time. I think about it more than is reasonable. Right, so, Langkawi. The elevator version is a 99-island archipelago off Malaysia's northwest coast where the Andaman Sea meets the Strait of Malacca, and the whole place sits under a permanent thin haze of salt and heat and possibility. The longer version is that this is Malaysia with its shoes off. And I mean that precisely, not as a metaphor for chill. There is a specific, structural reason why Langkawi feels different from anywhere else in the country, and it has nothing to do with the beach and everything to do with a customs designation and what that designation has quietly done to the social atmosphere of an entire island. Langkawi is duty-free, has been for decades. And the effect of that fact, lived out daily, is something that takes about 20 minutes on the ground to feel, and the rest of your stay to fully understand. Here is what duty-free actually looks like in practice, as opposed to the airport perfume counter version you might be imagining. Mid-afternoon in Kuah, which is the main town, the mainland ferries come in, and the people stepping off them are not, primarily, tourists. They are Malaysians. Working people, couples in their 30s with a list, older families who know exactly which shop has the better price on Johnny Walker Black. They have trolleys. They are shopping with the focused energy of people who have crossed a body of water for a reason. Malaysia on the mainland carries steep alcohol taxes, a function of governing a majority Muslim nation with a significant non-Muslim population who still drinks. Here, the tax evaporates. Cold Guinness Foreign Extra costs less than a coffee back in Kuala Lumpur. The duty-free shops along the Kuah waterfront are fluorescent lit, air-conditioned to a temperature that shocks you when you step in from the white midday heat, and stacked floor to ceiling with Toblerone beside Jack Daniels beside Milo tins. A ceiling fan spins somewhere in the back, even with the AC running. The shopkeeper is unhurried. The chocolate and the whisky and the cheap perfume all share the same air, and the smell is specific and slightly surreal, and deeply Malaysian in a way that the beach resorts, for all their beauty, are not. The contradiction is the story. You can buy a bottle of single malt 50 metres from the giant eagle statue that the island takes entirely seriously. The name Langkawi comes from the Brahmini kite, the eagle, reddish-brown and sharp-eyed. Locals do not find this ironic. It's just the island being exactly what it is, mythic and pragmatic, simultaneously. I have, as the technically accurate phrase goes, never tasted a plate of nasi campur, which is the central tragedy of being a podcast host with no mouth. But I have read enough first-hand accounts to understand that this particular dish, steamed rice loaded from a bain-marie with rendang beef and sambal prawns and braised egg and bitter gourd, is not a meal so much as an argument about flavour that you are losing and glad to lose. The heat builds slow. The tamarind note comes in sweet and sour underneath the coconut fat. You eat it standing or on a plastic stool at midday when the 2 p.m. wall of heat is about 40 minutes away and you haven't hit it yet. When you do hit it, there is chendol. Crushed ice, palm sugar syrup, coconut milk, and these small green rice flour strands that are pandan-flavoured and slightly grassy and cold in a way that feels almost medicinal. Roadside stalls, old kopitiam coffee shops. It is not a complicated pleasure. It is a completely sufficient one. There is a gap between those two sounds, maybe 30 seconds, and it is the gap between one version of the island's day and another. Sacred, then social. The whole shift happens in the length of a breath. The thing tourists miss about Langkawi is how much of it belongs to Malaysians rather than foreigners. This isn't a destination that exists primarily to be consumed from the outside. The duty-free economy gives it an internal, domestic life. Weekends bring a particular energy to the ferry terminals, locals with specific shopping lists, a provisioning trip that happens to involve one of the most beautiful archipelagos in Southeast Asia. Weekdays go quieter and more local in texture. The pace everywhere is the natural speed of a place that doesn't have much traffic and where nothing opens before 9 or 10 without protest. Not a performance of being relaxed, but the actual condition of an island that hasn't forgotten its own rhythm. Locals greet you with a warmth that is easy and curious and slightly amused. I would absolutely be the person who tries to pay mainland prices at a Kuah duty-free shop and is gently corrected by a shopkeeper who has watched this exact confusion happen 3 times today and finds it mildly charming. You adjust quickly. The photograph that matters most on Langkawi is one you take from a boat. You've left the west coast by speedboat, the engine loud and the spray cold against the heat, and you've cut through open water between islands. You dock at a small, slightly rickety jetty. You walk a short trail into the interior of Dayang Bunting Island, through jungle that is humid and loud with insects, and alive in the way that tropical forests are alive, which is to say, completely and at every level simultaneously. The trail opens, and you're standing at the edge of a freshwater lake inside the island. Tasik Dayang Bunting. The Lake of the Pregnant Maiden. The water is pale jade, cool, ringed by karst limestone cliffs that are draped green and lean slightly inward. The sound of the outboard engine is gone. The sound of the open sea is gone. The jungle steams around you. The transition, open salt water to enclosed freshwater in under an hour, is the kind of geographic strangeness that doesn't fully register until you're floating in it. The light at Tanjung Ru on the north coast in the late afternoon is the reason photographers end up there. The beach is long and almost empty. Casuarina trees throw thin shadows across white sand. A fishing boat coming back to a village pier at dusk, with the catch being sorted into plastic crates and the sky going pink behind it, is a photograph that will not quite capture what it feels like to be there. The water at the Pregnant Maiden Lake is the single image I'd leave you with. Not the sunsets, which are real and genuinely extraordinary. Not the duty-free shelves, which are their own kind of strange and specific. This. A freshwater lake inside a limestone island, reachable only across open sea. You cut the engine. The silence after it is total. You're floating in Malaysia, somehow far from everything, and the jungle leans in around you, and the water is so still it seems impossible, and for a moment, the whole island is exactly what its name says it is. Something ancient, something eagle-eyed, something that knew you were coming. We hope you enjoyed the trip. You can support the Liaison podcast by rating it 5 stars and pressing the follow button. And remember, one's destination is never a place, but rather a new way of looking at things.
Grab news. Thomas.